Hey guys, it's Stephanie, and today I wanted to do what might possibly be my first horror video in my series of horror videos that I am doing for October. So I thought I would sit down and have a chat with you all about why I like horror. Horror is one of those things that when people find out I really like horror, they ask me, like, why? That's such a weird thing. Like, are you okay? Are you messed up? Did you have a bad childhood? Actually, that one's just my husband. He always, like, asks me that. Like, what happened to you in your childhood? Nothing happened to me. I'm fine. So I thought I would just have a chat with you all today because it's a super interesting subject I love to talk about. So let's talk. Of course, first of all, I'm going to say when I was a kid, I always had an attraction to kind of darker subject material. You know, I, like most people that like horror, read through all of the Goosebumps books when I was younger, and I just couldn't get enough of that type of stuff. So, of course, I read like the scary stories to tell in the dark with like the super awesome illustrations. I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon. I loved all kinds of things like that. I had a really weird and unhealthy obsession with the Addams family, where like I wanted to be a part of the Addams family. I was a strange kid. But I just really loved all that. So, because of that, the horror genre, and especially things that I'm familiar with, like the Nightmare on Elm Street series, are very kind of nostalgic and comforting to me because I have happy memories of them because, like, I grew up on that kind of stuff. So, to me, it is just a very nostalgic feeling for me to watch them. Also, because horror movies and horror novels, I feel like, are a very safe space to explore fear, to really get into it and really experience that emotion in a safe space where you know nothing's going to happen to you. Eventually, this story is going to be over and you're going to go back to your real life. So I think that's really interesting, especially because I am not someone that you would call a thrill seeker. I am not particularly brave. There is no sorting hat in the history of the world that's going to put me in Gryffindor. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not me. But I still find it like a very interesting thing, and especially since fear is such a compelling emotion. And a lot of things are such universal fears. Like, a lot of horror obviously deals with a fear of death and a fear of dying and being confronted with the fact that you're gonna die and the unknown. And I find that so interesting, especially looking at horror that deals with universal fears versus horror that deals with things that are more cultural fears. I think that's my favorite part of picking up horror, is trying to figure out what fear it is that the filmmaker or the author is playing on. So as I am reading this, I am in the middle of reading The Exorcist as part of that big group buddy read that I am doing, and it's really interesting. The Exorcist is one of those movies that people say like is like the most scary movie ever. Part of it is because it does deal with the occult and satanic stuff, which are just, you know, creepy things that people are scared of. But it also deals with possession and that fear of losing control that we have. And if you look at it from the mother's point of view, it's she's sitting there watching her daughter go through with this and suffer and watch her daughter be taken advantage of, which is a big parental fear, to be that helpless, to not be able to help your child. And you see it through Father Karras's eyes, this fear of battling the unknown and battling with your faith and struggling against something. And it's just all such great storytelling. So I think that part of horror is also just really interesting to dig into. I also love researching, you know, different horror trends and history. You know, horror trends throughout history often mirrored or were metaphors for like societal anxieties of the day. For example, I think one of the most common examples of this, if you are looking for this, is McCarthyism and kind of the Red Scare with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where these pod people are waking up and infiltrating this town, but they look just like the people that you know. These people look like your neighbors, they look like your loved ones. And so people are becoming really paranoid and questioning who these people really are. And I know a lot of people say that was a metaphor for McCarthyism and the big Hollywood blacklisting that was going on in the time, and just kind of the mass paranoia of the city and of people kind of scared of a invasion of that philosophy of communism really infecting their small town, and where they were really infecting the nation. So just stuff like that is really, really interesting to look into, and recently why we've been so obsessed with post-apocalyptic type settings. Just all that stuff is super, super interesting to look into. That is just a huge reason of why I am super obsessed with horror. I really am. I love listening to podcasts. I will talk about this in a later episode, but there's podcasts where these kinds of things are discussed. There's a lot of great documentaries on this. On Netflix, I would recommend, there is a documentary called Nightmares in the Red, White, and Blue, where they interview certain horror filmmakers and they kind of talk about all these correlations and what was going on in the time. So it's really, really interesting. If what I was talking about is something that interests you, it's on Netflix. It's 2 hours. I would, definitely check it out. All of that is super interesting. I love behind the scenes stuff in horror movies. It's just all great. That's why I love horror. Do you like horror? Are you a horror fan? If so, talk to me. If not, talk to me too. I don't discriminate. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!